welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica with Turn the Page podcast, Syosset Public Library. And this is definitely going to be one of my favorite episodes. I could tell right now because I have with me one of my favorite teachers from my time at Syosset High School and several people's favorite teacher.
Well, my name is Jack DeMasi. I was in the English department at Syosset High School, and I ran WKWZ for 26 straight years. So that was, I guess, as far as I'm concerned, it was the premier activity at Syosset. Other than this forensics team, Lydia Esslinger, when,
Yes, well, yes.
Make the point as to which was the better activity.
I mean, I suppose, they could overlap depending on what you do. Did any forensics people now do the radio station?
Absolutely, yeah. It was a major problem. Because they said, you have a duty to the radio station. Well, you also have a duty to forensics, and it's kind of, a lot of kids had to balance their time from one to the other. But it did make for some very good radio programming and some superb training for those kids, because there were all these, discussion shows and so on. There's nothing worse than getting two kids from the debating team, arguing and trying to best each other on the air. It was just wonderful. But they were so reasoned and smart, and they all became lawyers.
Of course. Okay, so when you talk about the radio station, you also were involved. There was a TV station or a TV studio-ish.
The TV studio, yeah. When I was first hired in Syosset in 1979.
When I was born.
When you were born, see, there you go. And that was already my 10th job, as I mentioned to you once before. I kind of accidentally came upon this job in Syosset, which was essentially to be a media coordinator. And there were a lot of shenanigans that the school district used to pull in those days. Very creative stuff. I mean, I'm not saying this in the way they're doing anything wrong, but they simply hired me as an English teacher and then gave me all these other duties to do in lieu of teaching classes. So I always taught, but I didn't necessarily teach a standard schedule. So in '79, when they pulled me in, I had already been teaching college media. I'd been teaching at New York Tech's graduate school in communications, and I had a number of years of college English teaching, among other things. And so when they hired me, they were looking for somebody who could bridge the gap between the academics in the high school and the media facilities they were trying to build. I was hired at the 11th hour, which is to say the school board didn't make any money for my job until literally 2 minutes before they needed me. They needed me because they had what they call the middle states evaluation, and the middle states gives your high school accreditation. And we were supposed to have a full-fledged media program by the time we were going to be reevaluated. So we had 1 year to do that. So I came in with a couple of surprises. One was, gee, Jack, you have to go build yourself a television studio, and which is pretty good because, I know what they do, but, when it comes to nuts and bolts and wires and things like that, I'm not the greatest in the world. But there's a genius who worked there up until this year, named Roy Dipple.
Wait a second, so Roy retired?
Roy just retired this year. He got there in something like 1970.
Wow.
And he just retired earlier this year. He finally got to the point of where he says, I think I've worked long enough. But you can't do anything with a wire or he knows everything there is to know about electronics. And so we partnered up, and he was like easily the best partner you could have for all of the years I worked in the place. So we together built the television studio. In some cases, even physically built the television studio. There was some construction work and so on. And the funding, of course, was something we wrestled with for a bunch of years, and so on. At the same time, they needed me to do my job included WKWZ. I was not an advisor. I was essentially a general manager to the radio station. And they called me an advisor, but there was a little bit more to it than that. And the thing about that is that WKWZ had two choices at that point. They had to get a power increase, become a Class A station, because FCC was doing away with Class D stations, which is what it was, 10 watts, reaches the parking lot. So we had to apply for a power increase. I got there in September. The power increase had to be filed by January, and I had no idea what to do. So, as is typical in these kinds of cases. So it was a very rapid thing. And then we worked on that for 11 years.
Wow. Yeah.
We got it filed on time, and then there was just an endless succession of FCC stuff and so on. So my commitment to the radio station was pretty strong based on the fact that it took so much of my time and my life. 11 years of work in any one area is really, really, really tough. And keeping focused on that while trying to, of course, to do the rest of your job. And then, of course, wrestling with funding to get the TV studio built. So we had essentially a broadcast quality television studio with professional cameras and professional switching equipment and professional editing equipment and so on. And a great many kids who were WKWZ kids who enjoyed the radio stuff also got to do TV stuff. I don't know if you knew this, but we used to videotape all of our football games.
I did not. Wow.
Including our away games. We'd go to an away game with 4 cameras and a full switcher in a truck.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Absolutely. It was beyond nuts, and an entire intercom system. We did some good stuff, and we used to put those on public access cable.
That's crazy.
So we never really had a TV station per se, but we did have a fair amount of public access stuff that we shot. And Roy Dipple, who of course was the genius who put all that stuff together, because that's a lot of wires, and he had every little gadget, and if he didn't own it, he built it. So it was incredible. I mean, and also WKWZ used to broadcast all of the games, every game, including basketball and so on, and including away games when they would simply tap into the phone line and then run a phone feed back to the station. So there was just a lot of good stuff going on. There were a lot of kids who got a good start in learning technology. And then there was a whole lot of, there was a lot of kids who got started as broadcasters. We did have a number of them did that. And we have a lot of people went into, it's interesting, he said, well, you want to be a DJ? The kid goes, I love being a DJ, but there's no money in it. So then, you have no idea how many media executives we have, entertainment lawyers, and so on. But, not a whole lot of people who went into the performance side of, say, radio and television,
Yeah, in general, when you look down the Wikipedia list of who's who from Syosset, New York, it's pretty impressive. But then there's a lot of behind the scenes people. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, if I go out to California, it's nice. It's a nice way to get a lot of free lunches from all of the great former students I have who are now my friends, who are honchos in various things. Most people you would never have heard of. Obviously, Judd Apatow I think you've interviewed Judd.
Judd was our 100th episode, and of course, he sang your praises.
Well, yeah, Judd always does. He's a sweetheart.
As did Kathleen Kim, who has done many things in media and is a puppeteer on Sesame Street, and was graduated my year. I'd known her since elementary school.
Yeah. Kathy is just one of the great people. She really is. And by the way, Judd is an amazing human being too. They I had some of the best people, not just smartest people, but some of the very, very, very best people I know as students. It was a wonderful resurrection for my teaching career. I thought I was going to be in a completely different direction, and God, Syosset changed the world for me. Really did. Ordinarily, you would wind up having some problems with the way things were run and so on. The administration was great. The school board was great. I mean, here and there was somebody who was annoying, but the fact of the matter is that there was one thrust that I liked about it that put it, and it probably is part of the carryover to this very day, is they always put students first. Always.
Yeah.
I could go to administrate. I could go up to the district superintendent and say, by the way, the kids need this. And he would say, oh, okay. How do we do this? And they would get their heads together. And obviously it was important enough. I mean, they would sometimes take a little while to get it, but they always listened, and almost invariably they tried to get stuff done for the kids. How can you beat that? You really can't.
You can't. And, I think when I'd first reached out to you to see if you'd be interested in chatting with us, I mentioned, when I went to college, it was a really good knock in the head as to how naive and privileged I was to be where I was, to be in a school with a TV studio in the middle of the school and a radio station that was very active, and all of these supportive faculty members, and just in general from the ground up, everybody. And it's funny because I love Freaks and Geeks. And of course, when we were talking to Judd Apatow, we didn't it was just such a whirlwind. We're all like, okay, whatever you say. Freaks and Geeks, I loved it before I realized that there was a connection to my high school in my hometown. Lindsay Weir was such a good character, and I totally related to her being like on, looking at these guys like, what's his name's character, and being like, oh, he's so dreamy, but being like awkward around them, and also kind of being into academics and embarrassed about. I mean, he and Feig, they wrote those characters so well. And of course, the dad. This is something I regret not talking to Judd about, the dad who, every time, oh, well, who else did drugs? Jimi Hendrix. And what happened to him? He died. I mean, how funny.
It is. Well, and you think about it, literally everybody on that show has gone on to have really good careers.
Oh, totally. Busy Phillips, Linda Cardellini, everybody. Yeah. But it was it felt so good. And of course, everybody in Freaks and Geeks, in their way, they hated high school because you hate high school. And high school is a very difficult time. It's transitional. Everything is going on in your mind and body. You don't know how to process it. But Syosset really gave a lot of kids an outlet to express themselves that you didn't get in other places. When I went to college and I started talking about the TV studio in my high school, and people were like, get out of here with that TV studio in your high school, and the radio station, we had a kid who's talked into a recorder in the basement, but nothing ever happened with it, it was a real wake-up call to how much they did for the students.
And you can well imagine what kind of a leg up that would give a kid who goes to a college for media studies, for instance. They're like a place like, say, Ohio University had all of these. They had several TV stations right on campus. Broadcast stations. And so you get a kid from Syosset goes to Ohio University, and by his sophomore year, he's already working on something, and getting valuable experience that will give him a leg up in the job market later on. So, a kid going into college, say, gee, well, I have 4 years of radio experience. And they would know how to deal with broadcast, and they would know how to, deal with engineering, and they would know what to do when you're announcing. It's almost, it's funny, the kids who never had a leadership position at WKWZ would wind up going to college and leading the college radio station by the time they were sophomores. If it happened once, it happened 100 times. It just, it's just that much of a leg up. And that's for the kids who like that kind of thing, obviously, but I have to give the school credit. It wasn't only media, it was every other area. Our arts programs in general, our theater program, our music program. Every kid who partakes in those things would get a real leg up on the competition. And that's the privilege. That's the privilege. We had a district that wasn't afraid to spend money on the things that were important, which is to say, the supplements that make an education worthwhile. The teaching staff is kind of interesting. You don't even have to be that good a teacher to be at Syosset. Because, well, think about it. You are having a tremendous amount of support. You have students who, for the most part, are as good as you're going to get anywhere. So, you just go in there and run with it. So again, it gives everybody, even the teachers, a leg up. You have to work much, 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 much harder just to control a class in another place. And you also, my first public school teaching job, I arrive. They tell me I'm supposed to teach something that I really wasn't qualified for, but they said, well, you have nothing else. That's it. This is what we've got for you. I said, okay. They said, well, what about the books? I said, well, there's a vault in the basement. Go see what you can find. And I found books that were left over from the 1930s and so on. This was the Bronx. This is New York City. It was hell. The kids were great. I love the kids, but it was so hard to do stuff for them. I say, it wasn't hard to do stuff for kids, and and I can sing the praises of the district. And a little case in point, when I first was hired in Syosset in '79, I was actually kind of a tough sell because, well, for one, I had too many degrees. I had already been teaching college. I had I'd gone all the way through my dissertation stage of my doctorate, and so on. So that's a lot of college credits. And I don't know if you know this, but high school teachers get paid by their, according to their education.
Yeah.
So hiring me with all of that would have meant that they would have to pay me a lot more money. Plus, I had a number of years of experience. And Syosset didn't bat an eyelash. They said, well, okay, good. We'll come in. And they basically put me on top salary from the very beginning because that's what, my education and experience called for. And they didn't bat an eyelash. Say, okay, well, you're the person we want for the job, and we'll pay you accordingly. And that's something that any other place would have attempted to get me down to rock bottom salary, what I'd be minimally willing to accept. That's Syosset. They said, okay, this is it. Boom, done. How do you, again, you can't beat that. I'm sure that they have their problems right now. Everybody's got financial issues, and I'm sure that they, and as periodically happens, I'm sure that they have some issues with the school board and so on. I mean, that's just normal. It's happened before, but it hasn't managed to kill the place.
Yeah.
It's astonishing, really. I'm so happy I worked there.
I'm so happy you worked there as well. I really enjoyed your class.
You can tell I'm happy I worked there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's really nice to hear from the back, the back end of it, because of course, I was in your classes. Mm-hmm. Was I in one or two of your classes? Definitely one.
We had a
Probably
beginning in advanced television production, so you were probably one of them.
it was fun and it was great, but it's nice to hear that the teachers enjoyed what they did, and I think that that's the other half of it, because if you're not putting out that you're enjoying or that there's some sort of passion, I think kids know.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true. And when you hang around in the teachers' lounge, which we should never really had a teachers' lounge, but the darn, it was like a little evil room in a corner that ultimately became, what did they make out of it? They made a music theory lab and put a bunch of computers in there, and Dave Dolgan sat in there with music nerds, and just anyway, that used to be that evil little place used to be a teacher's lounge. And the funny thing about it is that only the angry teachers would go there. There was grumps. There were a few grumps. And they go, rah, 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 and I'll tell you one thing I found out about those clowns. I had no respect. And the reason I had no respect is because they never taught anyplace else. They didn't have that point of comparison. When I got to Syosset, it was my 10th job. And I didn't stay in any of those places because I didn't want to. It's, too important to have it not be done properly. And when I got to Syosset, it was like I died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
Because, everybody was so supportive and so kind. Kind especially. Not used to that. I mean, I taught in the Bronx, I taught in Harlem, I taught out east on Long Island in a nameless school district, I don't want to badmouth. I taught in several colleges, which, by the way, were not picnics either. You would think, okay, cool, college, that's great. Well, there's a lot of junk in college. There's a lot of silliness, I'm still at Nassau, so, it's kind of, I like Nassau too, but it's still like, there's silliness. So, the sheer pleasure of being able to work in a place like Syosset, young people coming in used to growl, I can't do this, I can't do that, gets into, well, I said, what are you, crazy? I said, I always thought we should have a teacher exchange. We should have these people teach in a tough place for a year. They'll come back so happy to be working there. And I think it's a question of appreciation. Syosset students find out, like yourself, what a good deal they had when they go to college.
Yeah.
Also, they find out how well prepared they are when they go to college. It's kind of funny, one of the things about teaching at a community college, which I'm doing now, of course, is that you get the bottom part of everybody's class. You don't get the top students. You get the lower half of the class. You get, lower 25%. The people who don't recognize that, that a college education is in their future, the people who are question marks in their own mind. This is not a terrible thing. This is, it's a good place for people to be. Well, Syosset sends almost nobody. Most, the one college that is the number one college in every single high school on Long Island is the community college. Because, where do you, most of you,
Yeah.
the largest number of a single group of students go to one college, boom, the local community college. Syosset, we send 5, to Nassau. We send more kids to Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
Then we send to community college. And the fun thing about that is that to Nassau, where most of them wind up, they're among our top students. And they're the bottom students in our class. The bottom students. And we're talking about dead last in ranking, and sometimes even, and many times even special ed students. Our special ed kids are trained better than anybody. So it's, again, these are the legs up that you get from being in a place. And you may not appreciate it when you're going through it because you have, like those teachers I mentioned, you don't have any point of comparison.
Yeah, and like I said, like being a teenager, you don't have any point of comparison. You don't have a lot of control, and your mind and body is all over the place.
Hmm.
So, it's tough. But
Yeah.
but you do see when you're away from it, you're like, wow, there was a lot. So, okay, so we know about Judd Apatow and some of the other people. Who else have you seen? Who else have you worked with? I know we were talking about somebody before we started recording.
Oh, the Todd. Yeah. The Todd I only knew peripherally. I can't remember whether or not he was actually in my class. I just knew him because he was a big personality. Um,
Was it Ralph Macchio, or is that the
no, no,
Karate
no,
Kid?
no, Ralph Macchio's a Karate Kid. I know him too, actually. I haven't met him.
It's not Ralph Macchio, but it is a Macchio.
It is, yeah, it's a Macchio, spelled differently. Yeah.
Okay.
Ralph is Macchio, M-A-C,
Macchio. Okay.
and Macchio is M-A-S-H-I-O. His mom used to be on the school board, and I think she thought that we were a bad influence on Todd. I think she would have rather been a doctor. Also, he was a football player, and
Robert Macchio. That's his name.
Yeah, Rob Macchio. And anyway, he was a very funny kid, and I thought a nice kid. A little different from the other football players, obviously, because he wanted to be an actor. And he went out and he did it. I mean, God bless him. He was the right person for the role of the Todd on Scrubs.
There's very few people I could imagine.
Yeah. He owns that part.
Yeah.
He owns that part. You can't, if they were going to do a reunion, they'd have to have him. It couldn't be anybody else. And he's a great character. There's a kid named Brian Coffey who graduated probably around the time you did. He went out to Hollywood and has been doing the acting thing all along. Has done a lot of commercials, done parts and things, but he's out there and he's working. There's another kid who graduated roughly around the time you did, Gabriel Rotter.
That name sounds very familiar.
He's been over at book reviews signing his novels. That's another thing. He's signing his novels, but he's actually a TV guy. He did the X-Files.
Oh wow!
He's one of the people who worked on the X-Files, a producer, writer, that kind of thing. So and they're all over the place. But who knows the writers? Nobody knows the writers. Nobody knows the producers. One of my good friends, actually, somebody I just love him like a son. His name is Bob Goodman. He graduated just slightly before Judd. So we're looking at early 80s. He went to NYU Film School, which was my alma mater also. And so, so I said, yes, by all means, Bob. This is a great place to go to school. And, so I was always close to him. And he was both a WKWZ person, a TV person. He did independent studies. He made movies before he got out of high school. He got into NYU Film School, God bless him. And he went out to Hollywood as a writer. He has 2 Emmy Awards. Judd Apatow has a few Emmy Awards also. We have so many Emmy winners. It's incredible.
Wait, what is it? Is it the EGOT, the Emmy, Golden Globe, Oscar? Why am I blanking on the last one? We probably have a few of those in Syosset. That's pretty much my.
I think Natalie Portman would probably be.
She was I think a grade or 2 younger than me. I had classes with her, but yeah.
Yeah, she got out in 99.
Yeah, she did, and but she was before. Like I remember, like Leon was when she was very young. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, she was acting when she was 10 or 12 years old or something like that. But she had nothing to do with anything that we did at the school. I don't know.
No, not at all.
Yeah, she was just sort of. She was already starring on Broadway. And
Tony, that's the T in EGOT, by the way.
oh yes, the
Yes.
Tonys. Oh really? I mean, there's some good Tony things. I mean, the show Rent.
Idina Menzel and Adam Pascal. We had Adam on a few months ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they're both Syosset people, and
Yeah.
they're both nominated for the Tony for the same show. I mean, how often you get that? That's crazy. I have a better story talking about the greatness of Syosset. And I say it's a better story because, fundamentally, deep down inside, I'm an academic. But I think they graduated about 1975. You know about the Macarthur Grant.
No, please
The
tell us.
MacArthur Grant is something you can't apply for. You can't sit there and go like, oh, I want to get into MacArthur Grant. They can lobby for me. Nothing. Nobody even knows how you get them, really. But they call the Genius Awards. And people just are named because of the work that they're doing or the academic stuff that they're working on. And the MacArthur Foundation gives money to these people so they can continue their work. And it's not a small amount of money. It's a good chunk of change. And there were two Syosset kids from the same graduating class who won MacArthur Grants in the same year.
Wow.
And neither one of them, and this was, I'm talking about these people, I know one of them because I know him socially. The other person I've only met once. They both graduated in the mid-'70s. One of them is Carl Safina. Carl Safina is an oceanographer.
Oh.
And has written a number of books. He's one of the world's leading ocean ecologists.
Oh, that's incredible.
And he's a Syosset kid. Obviously great academic. The other one is Alan Blinder, who became a professor at Princeton in economics, and who now works for the Treasury Department, or he's one of the top advisors, at any rate, to the financial beings of the country. And they both won that award the same year, which I say, wow, this is incredible. How do two Syosset kids get recognized for their genius in the very same, who graduated the very same class? And Syosset was pandemonium in the 70s. It wasn't as focused as it is now. And yet, boom, this came out there,
Yeah.
And I think we might have even had an NFL player from that time period. And he's the only one everybody paid attention to. Was his name, guy named Ed Newman, I think his name was. I don't know anything about football, so I credit him for. He must have been a pretty good player to come out of Syosset and actually get into the NFL. I think he was with the Dolphins or something, and that's a guess. I don't have no factual backing on that one, but and even his name, I never met the guy. so I'm just saying, well, we got one professional football player out of the deal, but we've got these other guys.
Yeah.
I was talking about Bobby Goodman. I always like to have to go back to him. Goodman got a couple of Emmy Awards for animation writing.
Oh, nice.
And then he ultimately was a producer, writer head writer, ultimately for a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Warehouse 13.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I suspect you might be a sci-fi buff, so
maybe just a little bit. If you ever listen to Turn the Page, or since COVID happened, some of my coworkers and I have been making just little videos of books that we like. Generally, if it's a little weird and a little sci-fi and maybe a little horror, that's me. Sometimes it's my coworker Stacy, who we tend to run in the same circles. But yes, Sci-Fi Channel, Warehouse 13, that's my gig. That's my jam.
Well, Bobby, the Syosset kid, was a principal on that from the beginning. And he went on from there, he went to produce a show called Elementary.
Oh, yes. Oh, that was the with I forget his name. That was like the one with Lucy Liu and like the Holmes and Watson spin-off take.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
The updated show. So he did that one until it ended. And I'm trying to remember, he's I'm trying to remember what he's doing now. He's just working with another show, but he's been endlessly busy writing and so on. Now he's the kind of guy that nobody who knows him in Hollywood. I guess people know him, but certainly not around here. And he's a class act. I mean, every show that he's touched has been great. And it's funny. There was a group of people. This was the Judd Apatow era. There's a number of people who are my friends to this day, because they were bringing that much to the table that I wanted to keep them as friends, and so Bob is one of them. There's another guy named Josh Rosenthal.
That sounds familiar.
Well, Josh did something that is absolutely impossible. Now, he was the music director at WKWC. He became music director, I guess, in his junior year. So he spent 2 years as music director, which is kind of unusual. That's usually graduating senior position. He then proceeded to go into college radio. He was so good at it that Columbia Records, I think it was, offered him a job right out of high school. And to his great credit, he turned it down and went to college instead.
Yeah.
And it was a formidable salary. Let me just say, they offered him more money going out of high school than I was making as his teacher.
Wow.
And by the way, at the top salary level for that time period, it was astonishing, really. But he very intelligently went to college. I have to say, I did influence him a little bit. I told him more opportunities would come, and they did.
Yeah.
And he did 4 years in college radio as working with the record industry. Graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Albany, and then proceeded to go into record business. They had a bidding war for him. The reason Josh is, again, like a son to me. I love this guy. But he ultimately, after a lot of years working in the record industry, just as the whole industry, as you know, is falling apart, and people don't know how to sell music or do whatever else, he proceeds to go out and start his own record label.
Okay.
And he's actually making a living at it.
Wow. What is his record label?
The record label is Tompkins Square.
Ooh.
Which he used to actually run out of Tompkins Square where he lived, but now he runs it out of San Francisco.
Okay.
And he had this incredibly bright idea for getting old public domain recordings and very, very esoteric kinds of stuff, finding a niche market and marketing to that niche. And obviously there are all kinds of economies of scale he doesn't have to deal with. But yeah, he operates the entire record label, and he's been nominated for a number of Grammys. As, believe it or not, Judd has too.
Well, he was very big. When we interviewed him, he was very big on like the old comedians who did a lot of recording.
Right.
That was really, I think, now you see them on a Netflix special, but having like a George Carlin record was common. So
Sure.
that's his background.
Well, that was his. Judd's another case. Josh went out and did and he also wrote a book called The Record Store of My Mind or something like that. It was really kind of a cool book. Judd, did a comedy show on WKWZ.
Yep.
Now, the thing that's, you got to realize what kind of a nightmare it is for a faculty member when somebody who's, 10th grade or 11th grade comes up to you and says, I want to do a comedy show. And, you kind of like slap your head and go like, oh. You don't want to, I've never been one to ever try to crush a kid's dreams. I've never been one to just sit there and be an obstacle and say why you can't do it. Because to me, education is about, let's see how we can do this. And so we worked out some parameters and so on. And he ran with it. That was the basis of his career.
Yeah.
He did an interview. He had a different concept for it. There were other kids who, again, Bob Goodman and some others, Sean Griffin, who did a comedy show where they actually performed comedy on the air, and it was quite advanced and very funny and appropriate.
That's where it's tough.
Yeah.
That's where it gets difficult.
That's the nightmare. That's the nightmare. You want to avoid that school from a member, that phone call from a member of the school board who's going to say, "Oh, by the way, did you know what they said on the air last night?" You never knew who was listening. And sometimes, I don't know if you knew this, but we shared a frequency with Plainview.
I heard that as a rumor, yes.
On occasion, Plainview went off the air at 2:30. We went on at 2:30. And when Plainview, was on, I mean, it's the same frequency, exact same frequencies. We used the same antenna. And you'd get a call from somebody in administration or somebody saying, "By the way, did you know?" And I said, "Well, who was this and when?" And it's like, yeah, that's not us, that's them. It was, that's something that you always had to be a little concerned about. Upon occasion, some kid wasn't using good judgment, and it wasn't about swearing on the air or any of those kinds of things. So sometimes it's just inappropriate programming,
Right?
like the parrot sketch from Monty Python or something.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and it's like, so there's an inadvertent, some inadvertent stuff in there. Upon occasion, you'd get that by, but other times, you get caught and like, oh crap.
Well, this has been amazing. I could probably talk to you for another 2 hours, so I'm just going to invite you back anytime you want.
All right. Well, anytime you need more information about the high school, only scratched the surface.
Well, this has been absolutely great. I want to thank you for taking your time to chat with us.
Nice seeing you. Yeah.
Nice seeing you too. So once again, this is Jessica, and my guest has been
Jack DeMasi.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.